On the 1st of July 1916, 19,240 British soldiers were killed in a single day. That's more than 6 times the number of Allied troops who died on D-Day. It was the bloodiest day in British military history, and yet they kept fighting. Why would anyone keep going after such slaughter? And what really happened behind the lines that led to this disaster? In this video, we'll uncover the forgotten truths behind the Battle of the Somme, myths, strategies, and the secrets that shape modern warfare. We'll reveal how British commanders believed one weapon could break the stalemate, how men kept charging into machine gun fire for months, and the shocking reason why it might have all been worth it. Welcome back to the war. The Battle of the Somme wasn't just a grand offensive, it was a desperate political manoeuvre. In 1916, the French were being ripped apart at Verdun. Germany was hammering them so hard that if Britain didn't open a second front, France might collapse entirely. So Britain agreed to launch a major offensive along the River Somme. But here's the problem. Most of the British army was still green. Many were part of Kitchener's new army, volunteers who had never seen combat. And the man chosen to lead them? General Douglas Haig, who believed the key to victory was a week-long artillery bombardment. He ordered over 1.5 million shells to be fired at the German lines in 7 days. He believed this would obliterate the barbed wire, destroy the trenches, and kill most of the defenders. When it ended on the morning of July the 1st, British troops walked, not ran, into no man's land. But Haig had made a fatal miscalculation. The Germans weren't destroyed. In fact, they were waiting, deep in reinforced bunkers. But how did the Germans survive one of the largest bombardments in history? We'll get to that shortly. But first, tell us in the comments, had you ever heard that walking into enemy fire was part of the actual plan? If you enjoy our content here at Legacy of War, then please consider joining our membership program and check out our merch. Now, back to the action. When the order was given at 7:30 a.m. on July the 1st, nearly 60,000 British troops advanced. They were confident. After all, they'd been told the Germans were dead or broken. But the moment they cleared the trenches, German machine guns opened fire. Artillery shells screamed back across no man's land. The barbed wire? Still intact. The ground? Churned into a muddy death trap. Within hours, entire battalions were wiped out. Some regiments, like the Accrington Pals and the Grimsby Chums, lost nearly all their men. By the end of the day, 19,240 British soldiers were dead, over 38,000 were wounded, and almost nothing had been gained. So how did the Germans survive that monstrous shelling? It turns out they had built deep concrete bunkers, sometimes over 30 feet underground. They waited it out. When the shelling stopped and British troops advanced, they re-emerged and cut them down. If you were in command, would you have continued the battle after that first day? Let us know what you would have done differently below. And here's where things get even more bizarre. Despite this disaster, Haig still believed the plan was working. Why? That's next. After the failure of day one, why didn't Haig call it off? Because he believed the German army was suffering just as much, and that the Allies could grind them down. This became the new goal, a war of attrition. But there was also a new secret weapon waiting in the wings, the tank. On September the 15th, the British deployed the tank for the first time in history at the Battle of Flers-Colliers. These mechanical beasts were slow, unreliable, and terrifying to both the enemy and friendly troops. Some broke down before even reaching the lines. Yet, the psychological effect was immense. German soldiers panicked at the sight of these steel monsters, calling them devil's chariots. But here's the thing, only 32 tanks were used that day. Of those, fewer than 10 made it across no man's land. Still, the impact was clear. Warfare had changed forever. But were tanks truly the game changer? We'll explore their legacy and their limitations in just a moment. As the Somme dragged on, both sides adapted. The British began using creeping barrages, artillery fire that moved forward just ahead of advancing troops. It was risky, but when timed right, it saved lives. Tunnelling also became vital. British engineers dug under German positions and detonated massive charges. One of the largest, at Hawthorne Ridge, was blown just minutes before the first day's attack, though disastrously too early, giving the Germans time to recover. Air warfare too came into its own. Observation balloons and aircraft guided artillery more effectively. Dogfights became more frequent, and control of the skies started to matter. While tanks didn't win the Somme, they proved that innovation could break the deadlock. Just 2 years later, at Cambrai, in 1918, tanks would lead a successful large-scale assault. And this was the lesson. Modern warfare required modern thinking. What do you think was the most important innovation of World War I? The tank, the plane, or something else? Drop your thoughts below. We love hearing from fellow history buffs. By the time the Somme ended in November 1916, the British and French had advanced just 6 miles. Over 1 million men had been killed or wounded on both sides. So, was it worth it? Here's the hard truth. While it was a catastrophe, the Somme changed the course of the war. The Germans began to realise they couldn't win a war of attrition. Their morale began to crack. The British Army learned brutal but vital lessons in modern warfare, lessons they would use to ultimately win the war in 1918. And perhaps the most importantly, it proved to the French that Britain was willing to bleed for victory. We opened with the number 19,240 British dead on day one. By the end of the battle, that number had risen to over 420,000 British casualties. Entire communities were devastated. PALS battalions meant that friends, neighbours and brothers died side by side. Today, cemeteries and memorials stretch across the fields of the Somme as silent testimony to that sacrifice. The Somme was a slaughterhouse. It was also a turning point. It exposed the horrors of industrial warfare, but also sparked the innovations that would eventually break the stalemate. It forged a new kind of soldier and a new kind of war. And it left behind questions that still echo today. What is bravery in the face of futility? What is leadership under fire? And how much blood is too high a price? If you found this video insightful, then check out our other videos on World War I and World War II. Hi soldiers, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments and check out our merch and membership programs. And don't forget to check back in again soon. That's an order.